I think the main question that needs to be answered this weekend is, why does America need conservatives?
Probably as evidence we need to bring back eugenics.
Now, the question of why America needs conservatives can be answered by just mentioning one single year, and that year is 2020. Now, everybody knows that almost overnight, we went from a roaring economy to a tragic nationwide shutdown.
Roaring is a good way to describe it, like the roaring 20s.
By the beginning of 2020, President Trump had created 7 million new American jobs.
No, the president doesn't usually have such a huge effect on the number of jobs created. In any case, job creation was higher in each of Obama's last 3 years than any of Trump's first 3.
We had the lowest unemployment rate in over half a century, and unemployment rates for Black, Hispanic, and Asian Americans reached the lowest levels in history. More than 10 million people had been lifted out of poverty and out of welfare.
No thanks to you.
And all of that changed in March. Now, most governors shut down their states. What followed was record unemployment, businesses closed, most schools were shuttered, and communities suffered. And the U.S. economy came to an immediate halt. Now, let me be clear. COVID didn't crush the economy. Government crushed the economy.
Then how come the economy's still so shitty in the places that remained open?
And then, just as quickly, government turned around and held itself out as the savior. And frankly, the Treasury Department can't print money fast enough to keep up with Congress's wish list.
How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? Pay for it.
But not everyone has followed this path. For those of you who don't know, South Dakota is the only state in America that never ordered a single business or church to close. We never instituted a shelter-in-place order. We never mandated that people wear masks. We never even defined what an essential business is, because I don't believe that governors have the authority to tell you that your business isn't essential.
How much of a dumbass do you have to be to believe that you doing absolutely nothing is a good thing?
Now, South Dakota schools are no different than schools everywhere else in America, but we approached the pandemic differently. From the earliest days of the pandemic, our priority was the students, their well-being, and their education.
Fuck off. You don't give a fuck whether the children got infected or, more importantly, whether their parents got infected and maybe died.
When it was time to go back to school in the fall, we put our kids in the classroom. Teachers, administrators, parents, and the students themselves were of one mind to make things work for our children. And the best way to do that was in the classroom. Now, in South Dakota, I provided all of the information that we had to our people. And then I trusted them to make the best decisions for themselves, for their families, and in turn, their communities.
The idea that individuals are able to adequately make decisions for the entire community is absolutely ridiculous. People individually have to go to work to pay their bills, but people collectively have to stay at home to protect each other.
We never focused on the case numbers. Instead, we kept our eye on hospital capacity. Now, Dr. Fauci, he told me that on my worst day, I'd have 10,000 patients in the hospital. On our worst day, we had a little over 600. Now, I don't know if you agree with me, but Dr. Fauci is wrong a lot.
How anti-intellectual do you have to be to think that scientists should have to have everything right all the time? The novel coronavirus was not well studied, and scientists make mistakes. That does not give you the right to bury your head in the sand and ignore the science.
Even in a pandemic, public health policy needs to take into account people's economic and social well-being. Daily needs still need to be met. People need to keep a roof over their heads. They need to feed their families, and they still need purpose. They need their dignity. Now, my administration resisted the call for virus control at the expense of everything else. We looked at the science, the data, and the facts, and then we took a balanced approach.
We didn't need a balanced approach. We needed the correct approach, and yours was wrong. Compared to other states, South Dakota has the second most cases compared to its population, despite being more rural than other states. You also have the third fewest tests per population.
Truthfully, I never thought that the decisions that I was making were going to be unique. I thought that there would be more who would follow basic conservative principles, but I guess I was wrong. Ask yourself this question: how far will people go to enforce mask mandates? Once you start lockdowns, how long can you sustain them? In South Dakota, we had some cases in March and April, but the virus didn't really hit the Midwest until late fall. Should we have kept people in their homes from March onward? Of course not. You know, it's important to ask these questions. We have to show people how arbitrary these restrictions are, and the coercion, the force, and the anti-liberty steps that governments take to enforce them.
Yeah, man, those seatbelts they force us to wear in our cars, those are so authoritarian and anti-liberty, man. To these brainlets, anytime anybody recommends a policy they disagree with, they appeal to some sort of conspiracy about people trying to control them. But what the fuck do scientists have to gain from telling you to wear a mask?
Often, the enforcement isn't based on facts. Justifying these mitigation efforts has been anything but scientific.
Just remember that scientists and smart people in general have leaned left since the beginning of time.
Now, many in the media, they criticized South Dakota's approach. They labeled me as ill-informed, that I was reckless, and even a denier. Some even claimed that South Dakota was as bad as it gets anywhere in the world when it comes to COVID-19. That is a lie. The media did all of this while simultaneously praising governors who issued lockdowns, who mandated masks and shut down businesses, applauding them as having taken the right steps to mitigate the spread of the virus. At one point,
I don't care about your personal anecdotes. Also, I'm not going to defend Andrew Cuomo, but you're even worse.
Again, in South Dakota, we did things differently. We applied common sense
Anybody who appeals to common sense is an absolute retard.
and conservative governing principles. We never exceeded our hospital capacity, and our economy is booming. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. We are #1 in the nation for keeping jobs, keeping businesses open, and keeping money in the pockets of our people. The people of South Dakota kept their hours and their wages at a higher rate than workers anywhere else in the nation, and our schools are open. America needs conservatives at the state and at the local level, but we also need conservatives at the highest level of government too. In America, we have government of, by, and for the people.
Yet you spread election fraud conspiracy theories.
Our founding fathers established our national constitution, and the people of individual states crafted their own constitutions that place specific limits on the role of government. Those limits are essential to preventing government officials from trampling on people's rights. The people themselves are primarily responsible for their own health and their well-being. They are the ones who, entrusted with expansive freedoms, the free will to exercise their rights to work, worship, and to earn a living. No governor should ever dictate to their people which activities are officially approved or are not approved.
Killing people is not approved. Being a threat to public safety is not approved.
No governor should ever arrest, ticket, or fine people for exercising their freedoms. Governors and members of Congress and the president have a duty to respect the rights of the people who elected them. But it seems these days that conservatives are the only ones who know what that means. Personal responsibility is considered a God-given gift in South Dakota.
Appealing to personal responsibility is what idiots do to justify anything bad happening. Oh, but it's your personal responsibility to not be in poverty and in danger of starving. Oh, but it's your personal responsibility when you get COVID after someone coughs on you. Oh, but it's your personal responsibility to carry a parasite in your womb for 10 months after someone rapes you.
Personal responsibility is not a term that conservatives have abandoned. When I was preparing to come speak with you, I came across some fascinating remarks that were made back in 1962. Listen to this. The Declaration, above all else, was a document not of rhetoric, but of bold decision. The Declaration unleashed not merely a revolution against the British, but a revolution in human affairs. This doctrine of national independence shook the globe, and it remains the most powerful force anywhere in the world today. That's fantastic, right? Those are the words of Democrat President John F. Kennedy.
Fuck does that have to do with COVID?
Is there any wonder why Ronald Reagan often said, "I didn't leave the Democratic Party, it left me"? There was a time when both political parties clung to certain fundamental principles, but today we seem not to even share the most basic ideals. America needs people who will stand up for these fundamental principles. America needs conservatives. It's easy to look back on 2020 and remember all of the issues that we had with COVID. But COVID is only one piece of a very problematic puzzle.
Just gave up
It
trying to
certainly
pronounce
showed
that
us
word.
how deep the divide really is and how thin the barrier is between freedom and tyranny.
Yeah, I think it's tyrannical that we have to stay home for months longer than we needed to just because some hooligans couldn't resist the urge to go outside and cough on each other.
But there was a worse movement that was happening in 2020, and it's an ongoing problem. Across America these last several months, we watched an organized, coordinated campaign to remove and eliminate all references to our nation's founding and many other parts of our history.
This is absolute bullshit. The history is still in the textbooks, it's still in the classroom, and it's still in the museum, but we shouldn't be celebrating people like Robert E. Lee.
Rather than looking to the past to help improve our future, some are trying to wipe away the lessons of history.
You're the ones who oppose the effort to teach our children about the injustices of slavery and racism.
Lessons that we should be teaching to our children and to our grandchildren. Now, this approach focuses exclusively on our forefathers' flaws, and it fails to capitalize on the opportunity to learn from their virtues.
No, that's not true. This is a complete lie.
And they had many of those. By discrediting the individuals who formed America's founding principles, they create doubt. And then they can remake America into a very different political image. It is our job to help explain why this is wrong. Remember, America wasn't founded for the personal gain or personal power of men like Washington, Adams, and Jefferson. The signers of the Declaration of Independence put their lives and their sacred honor on the line, and they affirmed people's God-given freedoms.
Hate to break it to you, but God doesn't exist.
Still today, the Declaration of Independence is one of the most important statements of purpose ever written.
It's actually not that impressive. It was mostly just a list of complaints to the King of England. In fact, they were so intellectually lazy that instead of justifying their beliefs, they literally just said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident."
And not just because it serves as the justification for our independence to the entire world, but also because it has led to our prosperity, and it's inspired many other nations and peoples to seek freedom. We, the people, have consented to a government that will serve all of us equally.
Then why do you spend so much time denying that systemic inequalities exist?
A government that will protect and uphold our God-given rights, as well as the fundamental rights enumerated by our Constitution. It is our duty to renew our commitment to these ideals and to pass them on to those who come after us. These ideals cannot be dismissed as the opinions of flawed men. Our founders had their flaws, certainly. But to use those flaws to condemn their ideals,
Wait, who the fuck's doing that?
and the greatest constitution that the world has ever seen,
Are you kidding? The US Constitution is a joke among political scholars.
is both unjust and it's self-defeating. How many of us can even live up to our own ideals? Without the words, the beliefs, and the sacrifices of those few, the world would not have a ringing example of true freedom.
As if an example of true freedom exists today. We'll never achieve true freedom until we abolish capitalism.
To attempt to cancel the founding generation is an attempt to cancel our own freedoms. Let's always remember, America is good.
Have you seen how much we fucked up the world with our foreign policy? We are bad.
Freedom is better than tyranny.
Yet you support an actual fascist.
We are unique. We are exceptional.
In what way? Our military power? Our prison population? Oh, I know. Our racial diversity.
And no American should ever apologize for that.
Very few people think an individual should apologize for the crimes of a country.
We should illustrate to the world that people thrive when government is limited.
Why are conservatives still stuck on this "is government good or is government bad" idea? Like, don't you have something more intelligent to say?
And people's ingenuity and their creativity is unleashed. We should also remind the world what happens when tyranny and oppression are allowed to thrive. These days, too many are embracing China, a nation that crushes freedom of speech and religion.
Wait, who's supporting China? Who?
China literally places religious minorities in internment camps. China responded to the COVID virus by trying to cover it up.
Unlike some unspecified politician who called it a flu and a hoax.
And one of their mitigation strategies was to weld doors shut to lock families in their homes. Friends of China are not friends of freedom. Make no mistake, America's leadership is needed in the world. So now let's have a really candid conversation. Everyone in this room and those listening at home, they know that America needs leaders right now. Those leaders need wisdom.
Lol, you've been lying to us this whole time.
They need the confidence to stand up for our principles and a will to act.
This is why conservatives hate intellectuals. They hate thinking, they hate introspection, they always want to focus on action, 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 so people won't question what's happening in the status quo.
Those leaders need to be conservative. We have a lot of work to do in the coming months. What may have worked in the past is not good enough anymore. It's not enough to say vote for us because your pocketbook will be bigger, or because we'll cut your taxes and reduce the regulations, or because we'll fight against abortion or Obamacare or whatever else. I'm not saying that these things aren't important. They are among the pillars of what we believe. But conservatives must lead the nation away from borrowing against our children's future.
Wait, but that's what you do every time you cut climate change regulations. That's what you do every time you cut taxes, increasing the national debt.
We must put an end to the accounting gimmicks used to deceive people. Joe Biden has been in politics for 50 years. At that time, our national debt was roughly $450 billion. Today, that's pretty close to what we pay in interest on our national debt. Everyone is to blame.
True.
We have forgotten principles that we once held dear, and we must more closely articulate to the American people that we are the only ones who respect them as human beings.
Unless they're black or brown or transgender, you know.
That we are the only ones who believe the American people have God-given rights. We are not here to tell you how to live your life, how to treat you like a child or a criminal because you go to church.
Holy fuck, what a snowflake. It's the Christian persecution myth again.
Or you defend yourself. Conservatives respect people as individuals.
My ass, your hyper-nationalism pits collective against collective, race against race. And your capitalism dehumanizes everybody until the only people that matter are the people at the very top. The idea that the same people who want to suppress gay people and transgender people because they disrupt the social cohesion and traditional culture are the same people who care about individuality is ridiculous. Conservatives are the most collectivist people on the planet.
We don't divide people based on their religion, their culture, or the color of their skin.
Yeah, you do.
We don't shun people who think for themselves.
Yeah, you do.
And we understand that every single person is different. Each person deserves the opportunity to build his or her life without some self-important government bureaucrat telling them what they can or what they can't do.
Instead, they get to have their boss or business owner tell them what they must do, or else they'll starve.
We don't have the media on our side.
Bullshit. There is no greater driver of right-wing radicalism than social media.
Conservatives must be smarter than progressives.
Have you tried comparing the IQs?
We must know our history.
By pretending that racism hasn't been a huge component of our past.
We must know what works and what doesn't work. We must think through the issues, and make no mistake about it, conservatives exist to fight for America and for every single American. Now, for those of you who are disappointed about the election, I am too. Remember, incredible innovation, though, it took place after Goldwater's 1964 landslide loss. It took the creation of many institutions, including the American Conservative Union,
The National Right to Life, the Heritage Foundation, and
It was institutions like these that helped bring about the Reagan Revolution and bring American exceptionalism back.
The Reagan administration was a disaster that brought an end to class consciousness in the United States.
Their work is more important today than ever before. So what can you do right now? It's really simple. You can be bold. You can show up. Debate these ideas.
Oh, please do debate me. I'll enjoy crushing you. Leave a comment and I'll contact you.
Persuade your neighbors. This pandemic illustrated that many politicians have a totally different vision for government than what the founders laid out.
Who cares what the founders wanted? They had no idea what capitalism or technology would do to society. Nobody alive today can honestly claim that they believe in exactly what the founding fathers did. And if they do think that, well, that makes them pro-slavery and racist.
It was once said that the left takes its vision seriously, more seriously than it takes the rights of other people. They want to be our shepherds, but that requires us to be the sheep.
Notice how she's just vaguely gesturing instead of looking specifically at any policies or people.
Let it be heard loud and clear from us right now. We will not be sheep. So I'd like to close today with a story.
No, fuck your stories. I'm here for substance. Holy shit, this is a long-ass story.
Because both matter. That's why I ran for office. My mission is to make South Dakota a better place to live, to do business, and to raise a family. One of the reasons I care so deeply about these issues is because I want these things for my family and for every single American family.
After all, if billionaires can donate to my political campaign, they can donate to yours too, right?
I believe South Dakota has been an example to the nation this past year. People used personal responsibility to protect their family's health and their way of life, while the government respected their rights and their freedom.
And as a result, you have the second highest number of cases per population.
And we are working together to create new opportunities and a better future for our kids. We took the American path. Let me close with this. As conservatives, we often forget that stories are much more powerful than facts and statistics.
Well, you heard it straight from the horse's cunt.
Our stories need to be told. It is the only way that we will inspire and motivate the American people to preserve this great country. We must go into this fight for freedom with our eyes wide open, educated to the tactics the liberals will use, yet totally pure in our motives.
Yes, I'm sure an elected official has pure motives.
This isn't about us. It's about our children and their future. It's about the nation that we're going to pass on to them. It's about telling their stories over and over that remind us why America needs conservatives, now more than ever. So thank you for all that you do. America is blessed to have you on her side. God bless each and every one of you, and may God bless the United States of America.
Just remember that she doesn't believe a single word of what she just said.